Hello and welcome to QTV. You're watching the Week in Review. I'm your host Ade Darami, and as ever we go through about 10 stories from the week, and as usual I have a very special guest who will try and make sense of some of the stories, and have a colleague and friend, Mr. Mboj. Mr. Mboj, welcome again.
Thank you very much, Ade.
And thanks for coming along. And as I said, if you're watching this for the first time, what we do is we go through 10 of the big stories from the week, and we dissect and kick them around and try and make sense of the ones that didn't make sense. So let's get going straight away. And the first one is to do with a national coordinator for COVID-19. Have a look at this clip.
In his first engagement since his appointment as the national coordinator for COVID-19, Alassane Senghor joined up with the KMC for a visit to the Latrikunda Sabji market, one of the many public places where adhering to social distancing appears to be impossible. At the event, the national coordinator for COVID-19, Alassane Senghor, says we have a collective responsibility to eradicate the virus in the country by being patient and dedicated. He also explains some of the plans in place to fight the pandemic.
Because there is a national coordination unit, we are appealing to everyone to come and we work together, because that's the only way we can coordinate to facilitate their work so that we can reach further. Because if we work in a disproportionate way, where everyone does something differently, then we may not be even reaching the most vulnerable.
Not sure how many weeks since we've had COVID-19 in the country, but finally we have a national coordinator. Mr. Mboj, took them a while to think of this one. Why?
17th of March, I think, really, when we had our first case, wasn't
That's
it?
right.
So from then on, absolutely, it beggars belief, I have to say, why we haven't had a national coordinator. I understand that there was a cabinet committee overseeing the whole COVID thing, and you understand that there's also the National Assembly.
That's right.
I think there's also a select committee and stuff like that. But one overarching body to coordinate all these different arms. Quite a surprise, but better late as never.
Yes, I mean, people are going to say this Ade Darami is very boring. He's always mentioning Sierra Leone and Cape Verde and so on. I won't mention Cape Verde, but Sierra Leone, because of Ebola, what they did was they had somebody from the military who acted as national coordinator for the Ebola response. And they've done the same thing, not the same person. In fact, the guy who was the last time is now in jail facing treason charges, but they've got a national coordinator from the get-go. As soon as they realized, even before they'd even had a single case, they appointed a team, and they appointed somebody from the military. We keep saying people should learn from what has happened in other countries and what has happened in other situations. Is this a sense of us not being a bit slow off the mark? I mean, 17th of March until this week? I
mean, absolutely. I mean, when I spoke to Director of Health, a Ministry of Health official, he was trying to draw parallels between now and the Ebola period. He felt that because of the system, the structure we had in place, so we managed very well for Ebola not to penetrate, not to come in. I said, fine, fantastic, that system worked, but we could never test ourselves once we've got it inside. So the structures really, when we are not tested, we do not know. And you remember recently, Hussein Udabo, the leader of UDP, took a dig at the government, saying that most of them are uneducated or ill-educated or something to that effect. From what you can see, we've remembered, over the weeks and months, actually, sometimes they would come with one statement, and then they had to retract.
Almost or contradicted
or errors that they have to come out and apologize for. There's a certain pattern of people who are still trying to find their feet in many ways.
Sure, but having said that, I mean, Alassane Senghor, a chap who has quite a good reputation, is with the Red Cross, and they have also a good record of coordinating and in fact stepping in things that go beyond what might be the sort of traditional Red Cross role. And I guess that must be why they've chosen him, surely.
Absolutely. When it was announced, I mean, from the indication I've got from the responses, I mean, everybody was happy. It seemed a natural choice.
Indeed.
for this sort of thing, managing crisis, for God's sake, to the Red Cross. This is right up his stuff. So we will see. But it will be interesting to know what is his remit.
Yes, I mean, what was interesting and what we didn't see in the clip there was that we started to get towards it, where he was reaching out to the country and saying the only way we're going to defeat this. But then he had a dig. He said people shouldn't be taking their their own initiatives rather, and saying that, we're doing this to combat it, we're doing that. Let's have a coordinated effort. And I guess, he's been given the role. He's going to have to bang some heads, isn't he?
Absolutely. But what you need is clarity.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe things are not clear, they're blurred. Perhaps that's why maybe an arm of a whole unit,
Sure,
what I mean, would sort of just do things independently without consulting. I think there is clarity perhaps at the heart of it, because if everybody knew what your remit was in a clearly structured way,
Sure.
so everybody would know what you're doing, what your role is. So that complementarity, isn't it? This is what you want, because you have so many different sectors in it. But how do they complement one another? What is the
It would be interesting to see, because, as I said, he made that plea, and it was also interesting, the event where he made his first public appearance was they were giving locally made face masks, and so he took the opportunity to actually make this plea and attend and sort of address the people before they went off this KMC, and we'll see a story later on about that. But he used the opportunity to actually make a wider point beyond just the face masks that were being given out, and I thought he was almost acting like a politician in reaching out and appealing to people across the political divide, and he made quite strong points about how this thing doesn't discriminate, and because of that we all have a role to play in things. I mean, I'm encouraged by the initial one. What about you?
How many times have we complained? Somehow, when it comes to political leadership, that person who would rally the nation in many ways, we've been talking about that.
Sure.
That sort of thing is lacking in many ways. So he has sort of stepped in.
Sure.
That's leadership.
Absolutely.
And this is really because you need to get the people on board. You know what I mean? The state agencies cannot enforce everything. This must be a self-policing thing, really. They cannot be everywhere all the time.
Sure.
So we know that, if it is going to get worse, only we can stop that.
Quite.
Try to forestall it or whatever, but only we can do something about it. And that's really the reality. So he has stepped up, and we'll see what his leadership, how it will change things. How would it make, for instance, accountability simpler?
Indeed.
Simplify.
There you are. It's going to be a test of his leadership, and I certainly agree with Mr. Mboja on that one. I think he's got a really difficult task ahead, but we wish him well, because for everybody's sake, I think this is something that we have to defeat. Thanks for that, Mr. Mboja. And now on to our next story, ECOWAS Day. Some of us are old enough to remember when the organization was even founded. But how is it commemorated here in the Gambia and across the rest of West Africa? Have a look at this clip.
ECOWAS is a regional organization of 15 West African countries established on 28 May 1975 in Lagos, Nigeria, with the main goal of promoting economic integration among its member states. ECOWAS Day is commemorated each year to allow member states to reflect on the progress made and reaffirm their determination to address the current challenges and leverage future opportunities.
Yes, old people like me are old enough to remember the first day, never mind the 45th day which we were celebrating, commemorating. And so there we have it, ECOWAS Day. I mean, what are your own memories of ECOWAS Day?
Here at school, we used to dress up, representative of the flags, or having colors of dresses that were representatives of flags of ECOWAS countries, and playing all sorts of games with the flags.
Right, yes.
in many ways. That was how we we celebrated it. But generally, I don't think it has quite the same wide appeal as other calendar celebrations.
Okay, and we'll come to one of those later on.
Yes, in many ways.
I mean, are you disappointed in that? Because this is a regional bloc that has quite wide and sort of grand ambitions. I mean, should we embrace it more? And if we're not, whose fault is it?
Yeah, absolutely, and we were among the founding members. I mean, Sasa Dawda Kairaba Jawara was also quite instrumental, in the negotiations and in the debate preceding the formation and the like. So absolutely, and we actually do see the benefits. We actually experience the benefits of this ECOWAS thing with 2016.
And yes,
without that threat,
absolutely
without that economic threat,
absolutely true.
then Yahya Jammeh wouldn't have gone anywhere else. So our perspective, I think, has been adjusted by that experience.
Sure.
So we're going to have to try to make it work.
Yes.
You know what I mean? We are different in our own ways.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So it just depends on what template. It depends on what terms of engagement.
The countries have with it individually, because otherwise it's just this kind of nebulous thing.
Absolutely.
Lots and lots of treaties and protocols and so on. But this is a actual real manifestation of something that ECOWAS, and of course again Sierra Leone, you have ECOMIG here, mission in the Gambia. You had ECOMOG mission to Sierra Leone. Don't know where the MOG came from, but ECOMOG, and it was a similar thing. That case, it was mainly Nigerian troops. Again, here you also have quite a significant company of Nigerian troops here. As you rightly say, this is a manifestation of some of the things that it can do. But also, they've talked about this kind of movement of, goods and people and so on. Is that happening as much as it should, or as freely as, is it flowing as freely as it should?
How many times have we complained about the implementations? No, not quite, it seems, because you do hear people who cross borders, with goods, they tell you all sorts of have problems, you have to bribe, or you have to do all sorts of things. So about protocols and agreements and that sort of thing, there seems to be a gap, this asymmetry between that and actually what we do on the ground. But all the same, it gives us a direction.
Yeah.
Political leaders, educators, civil society, everybody, it gives us a direction, and then it makes it better. But at least with that, you'll be aiming. There's a purposefulness to what you do.
One of the things which I think is probably not celebrated as much as it should was when we were doing this. I gave a quiz to the colleagues in the office and said, do you know what type of government each of the countries had? Of course, Mauritania has since withdrawn from ECOWAS. What was remarkable was that the overwhelming majority of countries at its founding were one-party states or dictatorships. Now, the majority are democracies, some imperfect, but almost all of them are democracies. And in 45 years, we've had that transition. And so there's kind of growing up, I guess.
That's absolutely it. You see, the relationship between the parts and the bigger picture. I mean, if we didn't have the individual countries sort of stable, doing well, then the collective body is not going to work.
Yes,
so for a long time, one can say that it was a kind of talking shop, because when the dictators were there, so they wouldn't say anything against each other. So what did it mean? There were no standards.
Yes, quite.
They were just too cozying up to each other, defending their own interests and that sort of thing, with the pretense of, what do you call it, sovereignty. Oh, we don't talk about each other's national sovereignty. Oh, please, what is the bigger, the larger club for?
Quite.
You know what I mean? So, but thank God now, in all these, be it Liberia, Sierra Leone, the whole neighborhood, you have democracies in there. Hence, that would give ECOWAS the body something else. That's why it's been able to come in here and sort out our problems for us. Had it been maybe a few years back, they wouldn't have been able to do that, or they wouldn't have agreed.
Exactly.
That is the key. They wouldn't have agreed. But with democracies, it's easier for them to have fruitful, productive discussions.
That's right. I mean, in Sierra Leone, you had the likes of Shaka Stevens. It was a one-party state. In Nigeria, you had Yakubu Gowon. It was a military dictatorship. You had Kerekou. You had Eyadema. You had all of these guys who were they'd come to power in coups or had established one-party states. In the case of Shaka Stevens, he didn't come to power in a coup, but came to power in proper elections, which he won, and then subsequently sort of annulled the constitution and ushered in a one-party state. So in a sense, I think that's a good thing. And does that sort of encourage you for the future?
Oh, absolutely. And I said you've just given us there a roll call of notoriety, if you like. But we had the counter example.
Yes,
Little
quite.
Gambia was the
Gambia.
democracy.
Yeah, quite.
You know what I mean? Such a Titanic, as it were, status.
Yeah.
Oh, such a small country. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, the problems we've had. I mean, they've tried all sorts of things. I mean, Jawara, in fact, there were certain politicians around him who were pushing him to go for a one-party state.
Indeed.
They thought that they had this, really, to my mind, misbegotten concept about when everybody, if we all are on the same platform, then, you know, there'll be no divisions and that sort of thing. I mean, to my mind, that is naive politics.
And I think it was deceitful, because I remember being in London when Shaka Stevens gave an interview to the BBC, and that's exactly what he said. He said, "Oh, you people in the West, it's fine, you know, you're all developed and so on, but we're just at the stage of developing our countries. We all need to be pulling in the same direction. That's why we need one-party states." Of course, he could have stepped down for somebody else, but he didn't. He stayed there forever until, you know, eventually, you know, in his 80s, he stepped down. But, you know, and they all gave that same bogus, reason as to why they imposed one-party states systems in their country. But it wasn't true, really.
Absolutely. I mean, history has found them out. I mean, in many ways.
Yeah.
So let's just move away from stuff like that. I mean, with Little Gambia, I mean, I think that democracy helped us a lot in many ways, and the competence at the heart of government and all of that. So the little that we had, I think that we used it reasonably prudently. In many ways. That was why in certain sense we were punching above ourselves. So in our institutional memory, we've got a template here. You know, I keep telling people that Gambia, really, when it comes to Africa, we've tasted the very best and the very worst. So we've gone from the alpha to omega, if you like. When we look at our institutional memory, we should be pretty good with analyzing situations. So there's a template there. We know what to do. We should know what to do.
We should know what to do, and let's hope we've learned the lessons of exactly what to do. And now on to our next story. UN peacekeeping. Yesterday, or I should say Friday rather, the 29th of May was International UN Peacekeepers Day. Let's have a quick look at this clip about the role that Gambia and Gambians have played in UN peacekeeping.
The United Nations has deployed troops to different parts of the world for the maintenance of sustainable peace and stability in the globe. Today, there are at least 14 UN peacekeeping missions, one of which is in Africa, called the United Nations Africa Mission in Darfur.
Interesting thing, the mission in Darfur is closing recent. It's going to close very soon. Most of the countries, in other words, troop contributing countries, they've been repatriated out of the mission because they felt the need to close the mission. But Gambia, though small it may be, they still ask the Gambian contingent to stay in the mission area. To me, I view that as an exceptional.
And it was a learning experience for me, hearing from the Chief of Defence Staff, because he talked about the fact that in many of the missions where Gambians have been deployed, they've been asked to guard the headquarters of that mission. And he said, you know, again, we talk about Little Gambia, and they've said, when you look at the UN sort of write-ups, it's because of the professionalism. So, you know, I think sometimes we don't give our military its due. I mean, did that surprise you?
No, not necessarily. I mean, for a long time, especially in Gambia, our police force, or where we could march so well.
Quite.
Yes, I mean, I'm not surprised there at all. I mean, things were reasonably well run. So one wouldn't be surprised that when they go out, they would do brilliantly, they perform brilliantly. But I think that is entirely different from when we come back to, you know, the internal politics, how we see things and that sort of thing. Particularly because with these things, it becomes a trend. There are broader issues to think about here, because we've seen all over Africa, wasn't it? Many countries, and so, because we're still trying to find our feet politically after the independence bit, that sort of thing. They thought that they could come in, all these civilians, and so they realized that it wasn't easy.
Yeah, true.
You're dealing with a very, very difficult
It certainly
thing.
hasn't been easy.
It's not easy. So now we are beginning to see that perhaps the military would finally understand that it doesn't matter how difficult with the civilians and how corrupt they are. It is not my job to go in.
Yes. I mean, it's true. I mean, and just when I was looking at this, I mean, they've had 70 odd missions, the UN, and I started looking because of the ECOWAS thing and also because of the UN peacekeeping thing. I started looking at various countries in our region where the military have taken over and the different things. And I watched a documentary about Ghana. I think it's called Scars of the Revolution, produced only in December last year, and some of the generals in the army who survived were very bitter, very critical of Jerry Rawlings, particularly because he had so many senior officials executed, and 3 judges. Why would you execute judges? Dragged literally from their homes, tied to a stake and shot in broad daylight. And so then you have in more recent times, what's happening in Mali, where there's still a UN force there. But the question I guess we have to ask is that if the first 2, and we were discussing this before we came on air, if the first 2 missions in 1948 for both Palestine and for Pakistan, India are still ongoing, how successful have peacekeeping missions been?
But this is it. I'm sure they will point to certain successes they've had, and then, but again, you will have certain failures. But this is it. Who was it that said? One UN Secretary General, can't remember which one, who said something to the effect that the UN is not here to sort of take you to the promised land, to take you to heaven. The UN is here to save us from hell.
Which is
it's like a band-aid.
Yeah,
it's like a rescue mission. And some problems are much more intractable than others. So I think individual countries, we must really understand what kind of an international body the UN is. We've heard some people floated the idea of a kind of world government. Can you imagine it?
Yes, I mean, in fact, even Liberia's now president, George Weah, once proposed that Kofi Annan should actually be this world president.
Absolutely.
And he said that in an interview I did with him. So I know that some people had that, whilst he was UN Secretary General, and that there should be a kind of world government, and that, UN Secretary General should be the person who should be the president. But also what's interesting is that the first mission in Africa was in Congo. When the Belgians were pulling out and they felt the country was going to spiral out of control. In the end it did. And also, again, my colleagues were shocked to know that Dag Hammarskjöld, the UN Secretary General, went there to broker peace and ended up dying there. His plane was either shot down or crashed. So again, kind of sort of quite a brutal entry. But what was interesting about it was that troops that were deployed there came from everywhere, from Ireland, from Great Britain, from Canada, from Ethiopia. Quite a large contingent from Ethiopia. I was quite surprised. And again, Haile Selassie even went and visited the Ethiopian troops there. And I guess it showed us that, the UN was, and that's been a kind of sort of signal of how and where they've been willing to intervene, and in what way, bringing troops from all over the world to actually go to a particular place to maintain the peace, to keep the peace, not to actually fire on anybody, but actually stop warring parties firing on each other.
Absolutely. The idealism. I mean, when you think about a body like the UN, I mean, really, when you think about it, it's a monumental feat. You know what I mean? Before, pre-1945, I mean, the way the world was going, can you remember? It was like you have a few countries banding together here, or another group, certain blocks emerging all over the place. It was pure chaos, it was pure hell.
Sure.
So the experience led people to have this idealism, to have this world body, you know. But again, there were certain political imbalances. So that had to reflect in the nature of the UN.
Sure.
So in a sense, that sort of had watered down perhaps its potential, what it could have done, I feel.
Sure.
whatever it does depends on really the power relations
Of
in
course,
many ways of
of
the
course.
Security Council, for
Absolutely.
instance.
And certain countries have vetoes.
Certain
So we
countries
know.
have vetoes.
Yeah, sure.
So this is it's at the mercy of geopolitics.
Yeah, very much so.
In many ways, I'm not sure what a strong Secretary General might look like. But again, now we are living in the world. Perhaps now it's perhaps a high time to rethink.
I think so.
We're living in a world where we need transnational solutions to the problems we face. Look at COVID-19.
COVID-19 has shown us that.
The international, the crisis 2009 or 2008, 9. So now we are facing certain threats
Yes.
whose impact is really global.
Sure.
Should we give it more teeth? In what areas?
I suspect if it got more teeth, that will be a sign for Donald Trump to pull America out of the UN. He already announced on, I was going to say yesterday, on the 29th of May, that America was going to pull out of the WHO. He'd sort of threatened that they would yesterday. He said they definitely will. One day I suspect he might pull them out of the United Nations. We wait and see.
But imagine this, just imagine a world where maybe China's grown strong, maybe India, and others, a few others also have gone strong. That US pulling out wouldn't matter much. They'll be like, let's brace it, let's go for it.
Yeah,
there must be some radical change sooner or later.
Sure,
As we know, historically, these sort of things happen.
Yes, I think that's the thing, because of course Africa still doesn't have the kind of veto that these other powers have, and until we do, then we're at the behest of these larger nations. But I think that's a good point to take a break, and we'll take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we'll delve into some more stories. So don't go away, stay with us.
Do you know with Q Money, you can buy cash power up to 5,000 Dalasi? Oh yes! Just cash into your Q Money account and start buying. Say bye-bye to long queues when it comes to buying cash power. With Q Money, life is easy. Visit your nearest Q Money agent to cash in or call customer care on 133 for more info. Don't forget to wash your hands with soap after handling cash. Q Money, Sunyu Kalpe. We innovate, others follow.
When electricity goes off, even for a few hours, life is disrupted. Control your power and your life with the Perkins Texan Standby Generator supplied by Timber Company. When utility power is restored, Perkins Generator automatically shuts off and returns to standby mode, ready and waiting to protect your home. Perkins Texan Standby Generator. Reliable, quality, affordable, and efficient. Texan Perkins, supplied and maintained by Timber Company Limited, your answer to uninterrupted power right at your doorstep. Visit us today at number 60 Bertil Harding Highway, opposite Wyas, for best fit solutions for you. Call us on 345-6789, 767-6769, or 767-6768. Feel the power with Texan Perkins.
Welcome back. You're watching QTV's The Week in Review, and I have a very special guest, Mr. Mohamed Mbodj, of Drive Time fame and of course of Viewpoint. And we're going through some of the big stories from the week. We've already had 3, and now on to the 4th one. This is something that is very significant for us here in the Gambia because of the strength of the sort of funding that we get, that we generate from tourism. Have a look at this clip and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about.
In his deliberations, Minister Ba says COVID-19 has had a negative impact on the country's heritage and creative industry. He also says the global health crisis and the uncertainty resulting from it has profoundly affected the entire tourism industry.
The culture and creative industry in enormous ways have been negatively affected by this state of affairs. The closing of performance venues, gallery studios, museums, including our UNESCO World Heritage Sites, and bookshops meant a loss of revenue to the sector. Festivals have been postponed, artist events cancelled, and artistic mobility banned, which means a loss of heavy revenue, including foreign exchange and moral to the sector.
There you had the dulcet tones of the Minister of Tourism, Ahmad N.K. Bah. And Mr. impact of COVID-19 on tourism has been quite devastating, has it not?
Absolutely, unbelievable. I live in Kololi, as you can imagine, this within the tourism development area.
Yes.
And recently we've seen the Gambia Hotel Association, they did that studies through GBUS.
That's right, yes.
They estimated losses of hotels was what, $6.7 billion. And I understand that was simply the hotels. When it comes to restaurants, bars, beach bars, and that sort of thing, those people were not represented there.
Yes.
In fact, recently I met somebody who said that they had formed an organization, these people, restaurants, bars and beach bars and that sort of thing, so that they would also perhaps calculate their losses and stuff. So you see it all over. I mean, taxi drivers or even street hawkers, people who go around selling fruits.
People who sell carvings.
Absolutely, carvings. I mean, I feel sorry, particularly for people who go around selling these fruits. I mean, the profit margin is unbelievable. It's hideously low. We all know that. So these days, when I see them walking along Palmarima Road, and knowing that all these restaurants, you're not going to have anybody sitting in there. You go to the beach, there's nobody there. That was where they used to sell their stuff. So unbelievable. Right now, a lot of people are really, really suffering in many ways because of this tourism thing.
Indeed. There was a study which came out this week. I think it's from the World Travel and Tourism Council. And they did for different regions of the world the impact of COVID-19 on tourism and the amount that would be amount that would be needed in the short term. And they estimated $10 billion US for Africa to kind of get back somewhere even close to where it was. I mean, have you seen signs that there are things? I mean, this virtual meeting, there was a good opportunity to exchange views from various ministers, particularly as they mentioned there on the creative industries. And we heard Ahmed N.K. Bah talking about performance venues and so on. Well, I mean, do you get a sense that there are things being put in place to actually generate some sort of recovery post COVID-19?
Well, what have we just heard there? COVID-19 has affected us in A, B, C, and D, as telling us everything that's wrong, everything that COVID-19 has done, as of how it affected all these different areas. Granted, but what I haven't heard is, what are you going to do about it?
Quite, yes.
That's really what your job is. It doesn't matter how difficult it is. One has to think about what next. What is going to be my strategy of dealing with this situation? We have no idea. And then even for the next year or 2 or 3 years, we do not know. How would COVID-19 sort of affect tourism? I mean, Western people, mainly, we get them, the Europeans, would they be more reticent in traveling, at least in the next year or 2? What is the strategy?
I did my own kind of basic survey, and you had a lot of people from Britain who were stranded here. And the reason a lot of them were stranded here is because they weren't rich. They simply did not have the money to pay even when there were so-called repatriation flights. They weren't repatriation flights in the sense that they were free. You had to pay for them. And some people in the West might say it wasn't a huge amount, about £550 for a one-way ticket. But many of them could not pay it. And so those people in the future are actually going to be very, very careful about how they spend their money. And again, I hope the minister's watching, and if he wants, he can switch off now. But about 4 weeks ago, the Cape Verde tourism minister came out and said, we have to make our place such a compelling place for people to want to come and visit, not just in the fact that we have beautiful beaches, but also that we have health system that is on a par with anything in the first world, so that if they fall sick here, they're not worried about having to go home. Are we doing that here?
Absolutely, nobody's seen it. They're doing quite well to hide it if they are doing anything here. No, we haven't seen anything like that. And talking about that sort of archetype of a tourist, that kind of tourist you were talking about, I have met quite a few, and you are right. They're not really rich. people at all. And right now, when they return, there are a few who are stuck here. When they return, and they repeat tourists.
Indeed, and many of them have been. Yes,
that sort of thing.
Yes.
But again, is that that's not going to move our tourism to any other higher level. You want new people coming in.
Sure.
So what is the strategy for that?
Given
the possibilities that can happen in the next year or two, and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But we haven't seen anything, I have to say. We really haven't seen anything.
Sure.
There's a lot of rhetoric. There's a lot of talk, press conferences, briefings, we're doing this, we're doing that, visits, photo ops.
Well, indeed, yes.
Stuff like that.
Yes.
But in terms of meaty, substantive stuff, I really haven't seen it.
And another clip that we didn't see there was, again, Cape Verde, where what the government are doing is that hotel workers and restaurant workers who've been laid off, they get 70% of their pay, 35% paid by their employer, 35% paid by the government. Should we be doing such a thing here? Can we afford to do such a thing here?
Well, we were told that the Ministry of Finance was looking into having a package, a stimulus package for small businesses. So what would that look like?
Sure.
I mean, there's something that you can do. you know what I mean?
Sure.
I mean, just because I cannot do everything doesn't mean that I shouldn't do something, that sort of thing. So it's I will not buy it. Let's put it that way. There's always something that one can do, and you can see some tangible results. And that is what we need to see, tangible results.
A good point to end there, tangible results. And now on to another story. And this one I was quite mischievous when I wrote about it. We have a whiteboard where we put up stories, and I said, invasion by Senegalese troops. It wasn't quite that, but have a look at this video clip and it'll tell you why I said that.
When they went to the ground, from their interaction with the community, they were able to establish that 3 pickups and 1 armored personnel carrier, comprising about 20 to 30 men of the Senegalese armed forces, entered the village on Wednesday, the 20th of May, around 1 p.m. And when the community, members of the community saw the Senegalese forces, together with the youths, they confronted them. And made it known to them that this is Gambian territory and what they were doing there. And according to information that we got from the community, the Senegalese forces told them that they were on a patrol and kind of lost their way and found themselves in Sare Omar. That was when the community elders and the youths asked them to leave Sare Omar immediately.
They lost their way and found themselves inside Gambian territory. I don't even know where to start with this one. First of all, when I saw these people confronting them with their bare hands, and these people are armed to the teeth, I thought, what on earth are you playing at? You must know these people are not going to shoot you, otherwise you wouldn't be remonstrating with them. But again, it shows, we talk about, I banned the term porous borders from my reporters, but I have to use it here. I mean, what was it all about? I mean, what did you think it was all about?
I'm not sure whether to laugh or to be pissed off. I mean, they strayed accidentally onto Gambian territory. No, I don't think so. Because with the PRO, the Army PRO, somewhere he said that no, this got nothing to do with straying into Gambian territory.
Or even hot pursuit.
Or hot pursuit, because apparently we've got this agreement where if you're pursuing somebody, you can go into the other person's territory 5 kilometers in.
5 km, yes.
The sort of thing. He said there was nothing to do with that. It was about timber.
Yeah.
Now that was, to me, that was quite interesting, because we've all seen recently Umaru Fofana's piece.
Oh, for the BBC.
From the BBC. Absolutely, which was a brilliantly done piece.
It was.
Well argued, really. So, and the government, they've come out and to deny it and all that. But my suspicion is that they do not really trust us to
police the thing. Yes, quite.
These bans. They banned this rosewood, the felling of rosewood and the like. I do not think they trust us because we've been heavily implicated in this. And I would like to see a more comprehensive, if you like, denial, like a refutation, not simply a denial. A denial is easy. Actually refute the arguments that the BBC program put up to you, but we haven't seen it.
I mean, I don't get the sense that we're serious about this, because how can we be exporting rosewood when we don't have it growing here?
We don't have it, absolutely.
And it goes through our ports. So somebody must know this is nonsense when you see this and it says, you know, produce of the Gambia, when of course it patently isn't. So, you know, no wonder these people want to chase people and stop them.
Remember, was it the statistic he gave us in the program, what, more than 600,000 tons of, you know, of rosewood, when we depleted our stock, apparently,
long ago.
So, we have to tackle these things. How according to the piece, remember, there were people high up in government who were involved. So it seems as if the Senegalese do not really trust us, decided to do their own monitoring. But still, how do we explain then what happened, for instance, in Garawal, when they came into Gambian territory, apparently to arrest somebody, a suspect of some sort, and what happened in Dar es Salaam? What is going on? I mean, there's a certain arrogance in whenever I come to your territory, I will do so.
And what's interesting is that, I mean, what's interesting is there aren't any instances of Gambians going into Senegal, chasing people and arresting them. I think let's end on that note. We don't want to give anybody ideas. And now on to another matter. You know, the COVID-19 has given us all sorts of things that we need to do to protect ourselves. And here's another, and this one revolves around KMC and an initiative that they've just launched. Have a look at this clip. And
today, the initiative is deploying 5,000 face masks through the market committees in the municipality. The council is calling upon the private sector and development partners to achieve the goal of 50,000 face masks in KMC. The council has worked with the Ministry of Health to identify.
And there we had the mayor of KMC, Talib Ahmed Bensouda, talking about face masks. And what was interesting about the clip is that he was actually giving the 5 things that they need to be in order for the face mask. They're promoting locally made face masks, and they were initially giving out 5,000. And so what was interesting, because they've kind of broken it down based on, you know, discussions with WHO and with the Ministry of Health. They needed to be multi-layered, they needed to cover right up to over the nose and so on. A good initiative?
Oh, absolutely, and yes, they had to have specifications. There must be certain standards.
Indeed.
Yes, and even the returnees, when they also, I wonder who made these face masks. that sort of thing. Yes. So that's it. So we are seeing sort of a few pockets, if you like,
of industry,
absolutely, around this COVID, our battle against COVID-19.
Sure.
So they've seen the business potential, because any crisis, really, you will have entrepreneurial moments, as it were, if one can call it that, where there's something that you can do, there's something that you can sell. So people are reorienting in an emergency, and brilliant, absolutely. Hope that it's got staying power, hope that it will also reorient minds and the way we see things, and they will last. They will just move on after this COVID into something else, producing all the things that we will need. So these little industries can survive. That's the key, I think.
And that is the key. Let's hope they will last. And also, what was interesting is that this was launched in markets where, as was seen in an earlier report on this program, it said in the markets social distancing was almost an impossibility. So good initiative to launch 50,000 face masks given away. They're not sold, given away at various markets, 18 markets across KMC. And now on to another matter, and this one people might think was quite a dry subject, but actually it's quite important. What is it? It's the importance of internal audits. Have a look at this.
The internal audit has been focusing primarily on identifying those issues that will probably hinder service delivery, and identify them and bring them out for the senior management, the vote controllers, heads of organizations, heads of institutions, to eliminate the risk that is potential in them trying to achieve their objectives of their organizations.
At a time when the world is faced with an invisible enemy.
Now, I have to be honest, I was completely unaware that there was something called Internal Audit Month. Not Gambian Internal Audit Month, but International Internal Audit Month. Mr. Mboj, were you aware of it?
No, I wasn't.
But what was interesting is that when you watch it, you realize the importance of internal audits. And what was also good about the event that we went to was how few businesses here use it. And they were also saying that even for something like COVID-19 response, you need to know if you're deploying resources, are you keeping an audit of those resources internally? I mean, surely a good thing.
The same way we run government.
Yeah.
That's absolutely it. I mean, sometimes I tell people, do you know really what democracy really is? It's about elections and all of that. It's about accountability and participation at bottom.
Yeah.
However, I can conceive of institutions to come and, you know, at least have these principles built into their functioning.
Indeed,
into the way they work. So this is it.
Yeah.
The accountability element.
That's right.
We just can't. We have, I don't know, this seigneurial, almost like attitude, as it were, quite haughty. We just do not give explanations. You know what I mean? I mean, just try pinning down government officials to give you specific numbers and stuff. They like using sort of abstract terms. We've got enough. Wow, God say what is enough? Exactly how
much is enough?
So this is it. So what is this internal audit month? I'm not sure. One should have auditing inbuilt into any system.
Well, this is it, and I think what they tried to do with the month is just raise awareness of the importance of it. And what was interesting for me, I actually genuinely found it interesting, was that they were doing it for both the public and the private sector. And so they broke it down as to why it's important, because what they found shocking, well, they would bring in people from both the public and the private sector and say, do you do audits? And they would say, no, they weren't. And this is me speaking to one of the officials involved. And he said, some of them were shocked to what it revealed. And as to, it was only then that it dawned on them why they needed to, you know, if you have 100 pens that you're meant to give out, and somebody says, can I have a pen? You come, you give them one. Another person comes, you give them one. If you're not auditing how many pens you've got, before you know it, you've given out all 100, and you don't know to replenish. And so there's a reason why, you know, and I just use that as a basic kind of almost nonsensical, but that's why you need to have that sort of audit before somebody comes in to tell you that. And they've said that this has been almost like a revelation to some of the businesses and even some of the government agencies that they've gone to. They're used to having external audits, but external audits are always after the fact.
Absolutely. For me, that's the key. The key is really what government does. I think generally, my understanding is that about 85, perhaps more % of many businesses here, in many ways, they are all sort of small businesses. They are all in the informal sector. And let's be honest with ourselves, we are not a reading public. People who do not read will be reluctant to write.
But what was shocking for me, and we'll have to end it on this shocking note, what was shocking for me, the example they gave was of a really big business that I won't even dare name or even give a sense of what they're about. And they did not have an internal audit system. And that shocked me, and it shocked the internal auditors. But let's take another commercial break, and when we come back, we'll be in the last leg of the program. Don't go away. Join us after this break.
tey nag su street stock bi ak Inco la kaay la ñu xool liggéeykat bi ak bagage Inco. noo gisee bagage boo use ni
bagage bi dëgër na garanti na yaaga na ak Inco dafa mel ni yaa ngi téye àdduna si sa loxo.
non macha allah suma liggéey bi peeli Inco ak pousse-pousse Inco macha allah gaawal liggéey taranga pel do si sona
ñun welda mané de bagage inko lañ dé gëna use because mo gëna wor
ñun mi liggéey aluminium bagage inko lañ dé gëna jëfo cause moy lu or ci ñun
ak inko bagage yu baax leen amé te quality li moy sen brand li moy sen kola fo mu gis bagage bu baax rek inko la mané ak inko si nekkee private sector la government sector individual képp koo xam ne rek da nga bëgg a sampa wala weldaman nga maçon nga carpenter nga kaay inko dinañ la jaay bagage yu baax te correct te seela te bagage yooyu noonu nag dafa ànd ak garantie ak inko àdduna bi mu ngi si sa loxo.
Onion blanc, a little mustard, a little mayonnaise. Little Kitchen Express, waañ yépp ay bànneex la.
Welcome back after that short commercial break, and if you're just joining us for whatever reason, I want to ask for explanations. You're watching QTV and you're watching The Week in Review. I'm your host Ade Darami, and my very, very special guest is Momodou Mbodj. And we've got 3 more stories that we'll try and get through, because we've spent so much time on the others that we might not get through all of these, but let's give it a try. Africa Liberation Day, another one of those days that we commemorate, celebrate across Africa. Let's have a look at what it means to some young people.
Frères et sœurs africains, nous commémorons aujourd'hui la création le 25 mai 1963, ici même à Addis Abeba, de l'Organisation de l'Unité africaine.
The organization was transformed into the African Union on 9 July 2002 in Durban, South Africa, but the holiday continues to be celebrated on 25th May. The first Congress of Independent African States was held in Accra, Ghana on 15th April 1958. It was convened by Prime Minister of Ghana, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, and comprised representatives from Egypt, Ethiopia, Liberia, Libya, Morocco, Sudan, Tunisia, and of the host country, Ghana. The conference showcased progress of liberation movements on the African continent, in addition to symbolizing the determination of the people of Africa to free themselves from foreign domination and exploitation.
You know, when we were doing that story, I smiled, I laughed, because it said, you know, it was about freeing ourselves from foreign domination and exploitation. Mr. Mbodj, did we free ourselves from foreign domination and exploitation only to have it done to us by our own people?
I mean, the words now, they sound so hollow. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. It was always going to be a long, hard slog.
Sure.
I mean, the euphoria, I think, really covered the reality. But afterwards, once we got into the reality, we knew that it was always going to be difficult. Liberation, what does it mean? It doesn't end. I'm not sure whether you can reach a point where you say that now we are liberated.
What was interesting about it for me in the piece, and we didn't, for time reasons, we didn't have the clips from the young people who, they were asked the question, do you think we've achieved it? And many of them, of course, said, no, we haven't. We're too bound up with, you know, getting loans and grants and going with the begging bowl. And they're saying until and unless that is changed or that is turned around, then this is all just more theory and just another day that we celebrate or commemorate with no real meaning to it.
Absolutely. We've been focusing too much on the politics. You know, we talk about sovereignty and political liberation and that sort of thing. I think true liberation, I think it's essentially, I think it's an economic affair.
Yeah.
If I can do for myself, if I'm independent, you know, I can earn my keep. You keep on going every time for aid grant and the like. It's
How
not going to
liberated
work.
am I?
How liberated are you? So we understand the inheritance. Everything was stacked against Africa. We were locked into an economic system where we were going to be the losers. But this is the price. This is it. This is the deal. I mean, if you want to be president, get real. If this is what you have, how do you create, what can you create? At least a modicum, a slight semblance of proud, independent people.
Sure. And we've got time for just one more story, I think. And this time it's about monetary policy in the shadow of COVID-19. Have a look at this clip.
The pandemic has already had a devastating impact, and the Gambia is no exception. Tourism is estimated to contribute about 20% of the country's GDP, but measures put in place to cope the spread of the disease, such as border closures, have disrupted economic activity and created massive uncertainty. The governor of the Gambia Central Bank, Bakary Jammeh, says they have lowered some rates for banks. So banks are encouraged to translate these to increase lending to the private sector.
This, I would say, this is a first step. And the first step is that cut the reserve requirement by 2 percentage points and release $700 million liquidity to the banks. So once banks have this liquidity, which is now available to them, it will also be available for banks to lend to the private sector and support the economy.
Mr. Mboj, I always get to the end of this program and say time is our enemy. I've got about 10 seconds, I'm afraid. He talked about liquidity being released to the banks and the banks lending to businesses. So the quick question is, with restrictions still in place, what good is it lending money to businesses if they can't open?
But that's absolutely it. I mean, anybody who's going to be lending money now, you're going to be very careful. Where would the money come from for you to pay it back? And as I understand some businessmen, when they tell us the interest rates.
Yeah, quite.
It's interesting to know the interest rates.
Yes. I think they've actually brought the interest rates really down.
Brought it down. But right now, in this period of uncertainty, it will be interesting to see how people will respond to this invitation.
And as I said, unfortunately, that one, we have to spend just a very quick amount of time on it. But in closing, let me say once again thank you to Mr. Mboj. Thanks for coming along. And to our viewers, thank you for watching. And as ever, your host, Ali Darami. And next week, stepping into my shoes, not literally, will be Mr. Mboj. I'm taking a small break. But join us again next week on the Week in Review. And as ever, I have to say thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.